Anna took an empty seat a few rows ahead of us. Each time the bus stopped to pick up another passenger, the three of us watched with mild curiosity to see who boarded and where they chose to sit. We were almost at the high school when a young-looking girl climbed aboard and settled into the seat beside Anna. Before long, the two of them were chatting animatedly, laughing and talking as though they had known each other for years. Bill and I glanced over at Roy and saw that he was smiling. "Would you look at that?" he said. "You'd think they'd known each other all their lives." From the warm tone of his voice, it was clear that he was genuinely happy for his sister and her apparent new best friend. We finally arrived at the school and stepped off the bus. I stole a quick glance over my shoulder and noticed Terry getting off behind us. Before she could catch me looking, I turned back to Roy and Bill. I was fairly certain she hadn't noticed my glance, and I was completely sure no one else had seen it either. Once we were inside, Roy said, "All right, you guys, I'll see you after school or maybe at lunch if we have the same lunch period." He smiled at us before heading down the hallway toward his locker. "Wow. I would hate to be on his bad side," I remarked. "He's built like a football star." Bill grinned and replied, "Yep, he's a big guy, and he is a football star, too. He's been playing since grade 9. He's a defensive tackle, and he absolutely loves it." I pictured Roy standing in the way, waiting for some unfortunate soul to try to get past him, only to be stopped in their tracks. It was easy to imagine how intimidating he could be. No, I certainly wouldn't want to face him on the field or anywhere else, for that matter. I sincerely hoped I would never do anything to put myself on his bad side. Bill and I headed toward our lockers, calling out quick "see you later"s to each other as we split up. Anna, however, hadn't moved. She stood there hesitantly, clearly unsure of where to go next. I gave Bill a nod, and he turned back, walking over to her. "Anna, do you need some help?" he asked. "Oh yes, please," she replied with relief. "This place is huge. My public school was nowhere near this big, and we didn't even have lockers." "Yeah, I know exactly how used that feels," Bill said with a small smile. "I felt the same way when I got here yesterday." "What's your locker number?" She told me, and I smiled at her. "That's only a few lockers away from mine. If any guy gives you a hard time while you're there, I'll make sure he backs off. And if Roy ever found out someone was bothering you, he'd definitely have something to say about it. He really is very protective of me, isn't he?" she said with a smile. Then she added, "I once saw him give a guy a serious beating just for sticking his tongue out at me. That was a couple of years ago, but everyone heard about it afterward. I never saw that guy again. I think he was too frightened to ever show his face around Roy or me." I smiled at her and admitted, I don't blame him. I'd probably be nervous too if Roy were upset with me. He's a big guy. "Come on, let's get to our lockers before the bell rings. They're pretty strict about that sort of thing around here." "Okay," she chimed in reply. Her voice was so soft that it was almost hard to believe it carried so clearly, yet I heard every word without any effort. Even then, I already felt protective of her. Anyone foolish enough to give Anna trouble would quickly regret it. Roy, Bill, and I would make sure she was safe. We hurried to the office so Anna could get the combination for her locker. The staff handed each of us a hall pass, granting us a 5-minute grace period after the bell since it was Anna's first day. I hadn't expected that, but I was grateful for the extra time. At least we wouldn't have to rush to make it to class, which was a relief. Running in the hallways was a serious violation of school rules. "Here you go, Anna, this is your locker." I watched as she studied the slip of paper with the combination written on it, then glanced up at the lock itself. The expression on her face made it clear she was feeling overwhelmed and would need some help. She had obviously never used a locker lock before, and her uncertainty was easy to see. "It's not as bad as it looks," I reassured her. "Hold the lock in your hand and turn the dial clockwise 1 full rotation. Once you've done that, carefully turn the pointer back to the first number." She glanced down at the paper and then turned the dial exactly as I had instructed, carefully following each step. "All right, this is the tricky part, so don't worry if you don't get it on the first try. I had to start over a few times before I figured it out myself. Now, turn the pointer to the left, passing the number you just set it to." "Okay, Nick," she said. She glanced back at the paper, then at the dial, and carefully turned the pointer past the number she had just used, stopping on the next one. Without waiting for any further instruction, she turned the dial back clockwise and stopped on the final number in the sequence. She gave the lock a gentle tug, and it popped open effortlessly. "I did it," she exclaimed. Her small face lit up with pride as she opened her locker. She quickly slid a few books and a binder inside, clearly pleased with herself. "That's great, Anna. Now let's hurry. Even with our hall passes, it's going to be a close call getting to class on time." She closed the locker door, secured the lock, and spun the dial a few times to make sure it was set properly. With a bright, confident smile, she said, "I'm ready. Let's go." I gestured down the hallway toward her homeroom. "It's on the left, just a short way down. You won't miss it." "Thank you so much, Nick. I really appreciate all your help." She smiled once more, and I felt my protective instincts surge, as though a switch had been flipped inside me. "You're welcome, Anna," I said warmly. "I hope you have a really good day. And if anyone gives you a hard time, don't worry, there are people here who care about you and will make sure you're okay." "I know, I'll tell you, Bill or Roy," she said with a small wave as she hurried down the hall toward her homeroom. I walked as quickly as I could to reach my own homeroom, but the bell rang before I made it there. I had to stop where I was and wait until all the morning announcements were finished before continuing on to my class. I opened the door and held up my hall pass like a white flag before the teacher had a chance to say anything. "I have a hall pass, sir," I said. I was helping a new student with her locker and combination. He read the hall pass and nodded. "Very good, Nick. It's a good thing she had you nearby to help her. Now head to your next class, or you really will be late." I offered him my most sincere smile and replied, "Yes, sir," before quickly walking out of the room. Moving as quickly as I could, I finally opened the closed door to the English classroom. As soon as I stepped inside, I heard the teacher say, "Did I not tell you yesterday that I do not tolerate students who arrive late?" I could tell from the tone of her voice that she was more than a little upset with me. I gave the note a small wave as I walked over to her. When she took it from my hand, I caught a hint of her perfume. It was quite pleasant, though I would have struggled to describe its exact scent. I kept my head lowered as she read the note, a gesture of quiet respect. Even so, I allowed myself a brief glance as I bowed my head. Beyond the pleasant scent of her perfume, she carried herself with confidence and poise. She looked impressive, remarkably so. I stood near her, keeping close without intruding on her personal space. As I waited, I took note of what she was wearing: a fitted white turtleneck sweater, black corduroy pants secured with a white belt that complemented her outfit, and the same red boots she had worn the day before. "All right, Nick, please take your seat. It's good to see that you were able to help Anna." She gave me a faint, appreciative smile as I moved to my desk and sat down between the twins. Ah yes, the twins. Just as they had been yesterday, they were wearing matching dresses. Yesterday the dresses had been bright yellow, today they were a pleasant shade of pink. The outfits looked neater and more fitted than the day before, giving them a tidy, coordinated appearance. I noticed the change briefly before reminding myself to focus on the lesson at hand. After a quick glance to satisfy my curiosity, I turned my attention back to the teacher and the writing on the blackboard. I would like to say that I sat there, resting my head in my hands, absent-mindedly watching the teacher's every movement. However, that would not be entirely true. My attention was elsewhere, and I was far from being the attentive, daydreaming student I might wish to portray. In reality, I had my notebook and textbook open, my pencil moving furiously as I did my best to copy down at least the most important points from the board. I worked as quickly as I could, but it soon became obvious that there was no way I would manage to record everything before time ran out. The faster I tried to write, the messier my handwriting became. By the end of the class, I could barely make out what I had written. I knew Sylvia would not have been impressed with the result. As I stood up from my desk, I heard the teacher call out, "Nick, could you stay for a moment, please?" Oh no, what had I done wrong this time? I certainly didn't need to be in trouble with my English teacher. I already struggled enough in her class as it was. "Yes, I managed to say as I walked back to where she was standing. As I stopped beside her, I caught a faint trace of her perfume once again. I glanced up at her face, trying to understand what was going on. The scent was pleasant, fresh and subtle, and for a brief moment I found myself wondering what kind of perfume she was wearing. "Nick, Sylvia told me about what happened last night," she said calmly. I sputtered, my thoughts racing at the idea of Sylvia telling my English teacher about what had happened the night before. If they ever found out, I was certain I would be expelled without a second thought.